Beijing was still awake when it should have been sleeping. The streetlights painted the damp roads in a golden haze, neon signs flickered from quiet restaurants, and the hum of the city was just a low whisper. But in one corner of the city, far from the bright stages and fan cameras, two figures slipped into the backseat of a nondescript black taxi, the kind no one would ever think twice about. The driver didn't even glance in the rearview mirror when they got in. His hands gripped the wheel, and without a word, he pulled away from the curb. Zhan sat by the window, his cap pulled low, the faint shadow of his jawline illuminated by the passing streetlights. Wang YIBO'S leaned slightly forward, his hood up, eyes scanning the side streets as if memorizing every turn they took. It wasn't the first time they had left Beijing without the world knowing. But tonight was different. The air inside the taxi was tense, almost too quiet. Outside, the city seemed asleep, yet inside the cab, every heartbeat felt loud. Zhan's hand rested on his knee, fingers tapping unconsciously. YIBO'S noticed and quietly reached over, his gloved hand covering Zhan's without a word. The gesture was small, almost invisible in the darkness, but it was enough to steady the rhythm. They weren't running from a scandal. They weren't sneaking away for a photo shoot. This was something else, something personal, something unplanned. The taxi moved past familiar landmarks, the deserted Chaoyang streets, the river glinting faintly in the moonlight, the quiet alleyways that once held their laughter during late-night filming breaks. The city they both knew so well felt foreign tonight, like it was holding its breath. Halfway through the ride, the driver's radio crackled to life. It was nothing unusual, just the chatter of other drivers sharing routes and warnings about traffic checks. But one phrase made YIBO'S eyes sharpen. "They're still looking," a voice said through static. The driver quickly turned the volume down, almost as if he regretted letting it slip. Zhan and YIBO'S exchanged a glance, brief, loaded with unspoken questions. Looking for who? Or, for them? The truth was, their sudden departure from Beijing wasn't entirely unnoticed. Earlier that evening, there had been whispers, sightings near a narrow back alley behind a small tea shop where they had been seen together. Fans might have brushed it off as coincidence. Others, not so much. A drizzle began to fall, soft raindrops racing down the taxi's windows. Zhan shifted slightly, the reflection of city lights dancing across his face. "Do you think it's still safe?" he murmured, his voice barely audible over the sound of the tires on wet asphalt. YIBO'S didn't answer right away. His gaze was locked on the blurred glow of the city passing by, as if trying to read messages hidden in the rain. Finally, he spoke, low and steady. "We don't stop until we're out of the ring road." The driver seemed to hear, his foot pressing slightly harder on the pedal. The taxi picked up speed. For a moment, the world outside looked like a scene from a movie, the rain-slick streets, the glow of tail lights stretching like red ribbons ahead of them, the faint rumble of thunder far in the distance. The tension in the air felt almost electric, like something big was about to happen. Then, without warning, the driver took a sharp turn into an unlit alley. Zhan's head jerked up. "This isn't." "Shortcut," the driver interrupted. But shortcuts in Beijing at this hour were rare and dangerous. The alley was narrow, flanked by old brick buildings with peeling paint and shadows that seemed too deep. YIBO'S subtly reached into his bag, pulling out a small, folded map. He glanced at it once, then at the road ahead. He knew where they were, and it wasn't on the main route out of the city. The driver didn't speak again, his eyes fixed forward. The tires splashed through puddles, the sound echoing in the enclosed space of the alley. Somewhere in the darkness, a cat darted across the road. Finally, they emerged into a back road that ran parallel to the highway. Few cars were here, just the occasional truck and the distant hum of a late-night bus. It was quieter, emptier, and eerily perfect for disappearing. Zhan exhaled slowly, as if letting go of a weight he'd been holding since they left. But the relief was short-lived. In the distance, a pair of headlights appeared in the side mirror, bright, too close, and not slowing down. The driver noticed them too. "Hold on," he muttered. The taxi swerved slightly, as if testing whether the trailing car would pass. It didn't. The headlights stayed locked on them, matching every turn, every acceleration. YIBO'S hand tightened around the seat. Zhan glanced at him, Their eyes meeting again, this time not with silent comfort, but with mutual alarm. They had been followed before, but never like this. The driver suddenly veered onto a smaller side road, this one almost hidden beneath overhanging trees. The sound of rain grew louder here, the branches scraping lightly against the roof as they sped beneath them. The following car hesitated for a moment, then turned in after them. Inside the taxi, the air was razor-sharp with tension. Zhan shifted closer to YIBO', his voice barely above a whisper. "If they get closer, we..." But he didn't finish. The driver, without warning, killed the headlights and slowed to a crawl. The following car sped past the hidden taxi, its taillights vanishing into the rain. For a few seconds, all that could be heard was the ticking of the cooling engine and the rain pattering against the glass. YIBO'S shoulders relaxed, but his eyes stayed alert. "Not safe yet," he said softly. The driver flicked the headlights back on and merged back onto the open road. Soon, the faint glow of the city faded behind them, replaced by the dark, stretching emptiness of the highway out of Beijing. The rain had eased to a mist now, and the air smelled of wet earth and freedom. No one spoke for the next few kilometers. It was as if they were afraid that words would pull them back into the danger they'd just escaped. When the first signs for the outskirts appeared, Zhan finally leaned back, his head against the seat, eyes closing for just a moment. YIBO' glanced at him, a small, almost invisible smile tugging at the corner of his lips. In that moment, he looked less like a man on the run and more like someone who had just made it through the storm with someone he trusted completely. The driver pulled over near a service station, far from the prying eyes of Beijing. "This is as far as I go," he said. They stepped out, the cool night air wrapping around them. The city was now just a memory in the distance. Whatever lay ahead, a safe house, a quiet retreat, or another journey entirely, they would face it together. Some stories never make it to the headlines. Some moments stay hidden in the shadows, whispered only between those who were there. But those who know, really know, understand that sometimes, a simple taxi ride can change everything. And for Zhan and Wang YIBO', this one just did. The rain had eased, but the dampness still clung to the air, making every breath feel heavy. The highway stretched ahead like an endless ribbon, illuminated only by the dim glow of the taxi's headlights. Inside, Zhan and Wang YIBO' remained silent, both replaying the last 30 minutes in their minds, the sudden alley turn, the following car, the blackout maneuver that saved them. The driver's hand stayed firmly at 10 and 2, his knuckles pale. He hadn't spoken since they'd left the city's edge, and somehow that silence felt safer than small talk. Still, Zhan's mind refused to settle. Through the misted window, he caught glimpses of small roadside shops with shuttered windows, lone gas stations with flickering neon signs, and the occasional night wanderer bundled in a coat, hunched against the cold. It struck him how strange it was how these people moved through their nights completely unaware of the storm that followed in the shadows of his and YIBO'S lives. A vibration broke the stillness. YIBO'S phone buzzed once in his pocket. He pulled it out quickly, the screen lighting his face for just a second. A single message. No name. Just 3 words, "They know now." YIBO'S jaw tightened. He didn't show the screen to Zhan immediately, not because he wanted to keep it a secret, but because he didn't want panic to settle in too soon. He slipped the phone back into his pocket, his gaze fixed forward. But Zhan noticed. He always noticed. What was that? Zhan's voice was soft, but his eyes searched YIBO'S face like they could dig the answer out. YIBO' hesitated, then answered in the same calm tone he used whenever he didn't want to alarm anyone. "It's nothing urgent. But, we should keep moving." The driver suddenly cleared his throat. "This road ahead splits in 3. The middle lane will take you to Tianjin, left will loop toward the coast, and the right leads to the mountains." Mountains. The word hung in the air like a quiet promise, a place where they could disappear for days, maybe weeks, until whatever storm this was had passed. "Right," YIBO' said immediately. The driver didn't question it. He simply signaled and took the turn. The further they drove, the darker it became. Streetlights thinned, replaced by the silver glow of moonlight breaking through shifting clouds. The hum of the city was gone now, replaced by the occasional rush of wind through the taxi's cracked window. They were climbing slowly, the road curving through dense forest. Every so often, the trees would break just enough for them to glimpse the faint twinkle of city lights far below. Zhan leaned his head against the glass, watching the world they'd just left shrink into nothing more than a scattering of stars on the horizon. But peace was short-lived. Up ahead, parked awkwardly on the side of the road, was a white SUV with its hazard lights blinking. As they approached, the driver instinctively slowed down. A man stepped out from behind the vehicle, his face shadowed by the brim of a baseball cap. He raised a hand, not quite waving, more, signaling. The driver's fingers tightened around the wheel. "Do we stop?" YIBO'S answer was immediate. "No. Keep going." But as they drew closer, the man stepped into the lane, forcing the taxi to slow to a crawl. The hazard lights reflected off the wet road, making the scene look surreal, almost staged. Zhan's pulse spiked. His hand slid closer to YIBO'S, not for reassurance but to signal that he was ready for whatever this was about to turn into. The driver swerved slightly, avoiding the man without stopping. For a tense few seconds, nothing happened. Then, as they passed, the man's face lifted just enough for Zhan to catch a glimpse, not someone he recognized, but the sharp glint in his eyes was unforgettable. In the side mirror, they saw him get back into the SUV. The hazard lights went out. Headlights came on. "His following," the driver said grimly. YIBO leaned forward. "Then we don't give him the chance to catch up." The taxi surged forward, engine humming louder as they began a winding race through the mountain road. Rain began again, fine and misty at first, then heavier, the kind that made every curve on the slick pavement a gamble. The SUV stayed behind them, never gaining much distance but never dropping away. It was a shadow, stubborn and unshakable. Minutes passed like hours until the driver suddenly veered onto a narrow dirt road branching off from the main path. Trees closed in around them, their branches arching overhead like dark ribs. The SUV didn't follow. They drove another 5 minutes before the driver stopped in a small clearing, engine idling. The only sounds were the rain dripping through the leaves and their own shallow breathing. "This is as far as I can take you," the driver said quietly. Zhan and YIBO exchanged a look, not fear this time, but a silent agreement. They stepped out into the night, the smell of wet earth grounding them in the moment. The driver gave a small nod, then reversed slowly, disappearing back down the dirt road. Alone now, they stood in the clearing, their breath visible in the cold air. The forest seemed to hum with quiet life, distant owls, the rustle of leaves, the patter of rain. "What now?" Zhan asked finally. YIBO glanced toward a barely visible footpath leading deeper into the trees. "We keep walking. Until the sun comes up, we keep walking." Zhan managed a faint smile, his voice laced with both exhaustion and something unshakable. "Then let's go." And so, under the cover of rain and darkness, they disappeared into the mountains, two silhouettes moving deeper into a night that would change the course of everything. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more dramatic, cinematic tales that keep you on the edge of your seat. Your support helps bring you more of these mind-blowing moments.